Perfect. And the audio works just fine, right? Okay, great. I think she has some notes. If you set it down here, will it work, or do you need to set it here?
I'm gonna put it here if that's okay.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Everybody's cell phones off? Okay. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. We are here this morning to announce findings in our civil pattern and practice investigation into Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. I am Adair Boroughs, the United States Attorney for the District of South Carolina, and with me is AUSA and Civil Deputy Chief Johanna Valenzuela, who led the investigative team in our office. The Department of Justice opened this investigation in November of 2023 based on reports of stabbings, assaults, homicides, sexual assaults, and unsafe conditions in the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. Our investigation has revealed that these incidents are not isolated. The incidents of violence at Alvin S. Glenn are pervasive, systematic, and commonplace. Alvin S. Glenn is marked by a culture of violence that poses a risk to those that are housed there, as well as to staff and to law enforcement. Our investigation considered, and you will see in our findings reported, noted steps that Richland County has taken recently to improve some of the conditions at the jail. These include things like renovating the housing units. Some have happened, some are planned for future years. They include updating and replacing locks, some of which has happened, some of which are planned, and we certainly applaud these steps that the county has taken. However, the widespread violence at Alvin S. Glenn continues, and it is a problem that requires additional action. Individuals who are charged with a crime and detained at Alvin S. Glenn face very real possibilities of being stabbed, raped, and beaten before they ever see a courtroom. Such conditions violate the United States Constitution. For more than a year, our team gathered documents and data and information from the jail through their county attorneys. We gathered information from state and local agencies, as well as from other third parties, such as hospitals. Investigators conducted a thorough inspection of the facilities. We interviewed jail staff and jail leadership. We received hundreds of letters, emails, and calls from people detained or incarcerated at the jail, from their loved ones, and from advocates. Investigators spoke with dozens of individuals detained at the jail, with their family members, as well as with community advocates. All of them had disturbing stories of violence. Their plea was the same. We are afraid for the lives of our loved ones. Something has to be done. While corrections departments across our country are facing some tough challenges, such as adequate staffing and contraband control, the issues at the Richland County Jail extend well beyond industry norms. The jail's own records indicate over 150 assaults in a 9-month period, and we know that this number undercounts and does not include all of the assaults that happened. We saw multiple instances, some of which we have detailed in the findings report, where the jail did not respond to violence and did not respond to serious injury until they were notified from the outside days later that the incident occurred. The county must take additional steps to address this violence. In our findings report, we've outlined some minimal remedial measures to do so. And I also want to say we're not adversarial in this charge. We do applaud the steps the county has already taken with regard to the physical plant, and we believe that we have a shared goal with the county to make conditions at the jail safe, to make them meet minimal constitutional standards, and we look forward to working with the county to make that happen here in our community. So with that, I'm happy to take a few questions.
So throughout the investigation, Richland County, after you all announced the investigation, hired some law firms. They said they were going to be for an internal investigation and to assist you all in your investigation. Did the county, in fact, assist you all, or what was that process like? Did they work with you guys for this?
Through attorneys and otherwise, we obtained sufficient information for our findings, both from the county as well as from other sources.
Did the county give any reason for why they weren't responding to some of those violent acts that was happening right there?
Well, one of the things we found in our investigation, you'll see this in our report, is really that there weren't staff there. No one knew about the assaults. No one knew what was happening. We also found that there were not adequate ways for people detained at the housing to get help and ask for help. We saw situations where victims could not get away from their attackers and resorted to things like self-mutilation in order to get housed in a different place or moved and to be able to report those types of assaults. So because no one was in the housing unit, no one knew that it happened, is a fact pattern that we saw multiple times.
And at this stage of the investigation, are there any laws that are broken or any type of violations that Richland County may be held accountable for these type of acts?
So the violations that we find are violations of the 8th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution. The statute that the investigation was conducted under is called the CRIPA, or Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act. This statute gives the Attorney General and the Department the ability to conduct these types of investigations, and also, if we can't reach resolution, to bring a lawsuit later.
What's the steps you guys recommending?
So we have a number of them. They're written out in an outlined report. They have to do with things like staffing and supervision, as I just mentioned, making sure that people are physically present and aware of incidents. They include things around housing classification and how inmates are classified and housed. They include things about the physical plant. They also include a lot of things about investigations and keeping reports. One of the things we found is we actually really don't know what level of violence there is. We know the floor, but there's not a consistent way to keep track of incidents, to keep track of contraband. We found multiple incidences where crime scenes were cleaned up by inmates before the sheriff's office was ever notified, or maybe they weren't ever notified. And so we make recommendations in all of those areas, and we did it in consultation with correctional experts with decades of experience that have been on the ground doing this kind of work.
Can you discuss what some of the measures are to ensure accountability for the county moving forward with these recommendations? Would it be a lawsuit? Would it be a consent decree? Can you give an explanation what that might be?
Yeah, so next steps, we fully expect this to be cooperative with the county. I believe the county does want the jail to be safe, so we hope to work with them. Usually the way it works is we will try and get some type of written agreement about what minimal remedial measures are required in order to meet constitutional standards. If, for some reason, that doesn't happen, CRIPA does allow us to bring a lawsuit or to intervene in another lawsuit to protect the constitutional interests of detained people.
Is there a timetable for them to comply?
So there's not a timetable that we are setting out. The statute allows us to file a lawsuit as soon as 45 days from today, or to intervene 15 days from today, but we will be working with the county first, and the findings report does not set a deadline. In our conversations with the counties, one of the things that we will discuss is timelines and how quickly these things need to take place. I will emphasize some of these things the county has to take immediate action to make stuff safer, but timelines is something we will discuss with them.
How many lawsuits are there in the center you have?
That's a good question. We are aware of,
I don't know the count of how many private lawsuits that we have, but we know that they're facing at least 3 different lawsuits right now, 2 from individuals and 1 based on, brought by DRSC, Disability Rights of South Carolina.
so we haven't been notified of every private lawsuit, and, I read about another one in the paper a week or 2 ago that we were unaware of, and was a death in custody that we were unaware of, so I don't have a count on that.
In a worst-case scenario that they never comply to the level of acceptance and standing, what would be the next step after that for Alvin and Glenn?
So again, the department can bring a lawsuit if it needs to in order to get a court order to enforce changes at the jail if it were needed. That is not what we expect. We absolutely hope to work with the county to come up with solutions to keep people safe.
Do you have any updates on the Charleston County Jail investigation?
That investigation is ongoing.
Have you finished interviews and information collection in that investigation?
We don't report on investigations until we're ready to issue findings.
When it comes to working with the county through that timeline, will this administration change with the inauguration coming up next week? Will that impact any of that, and did that factor into your timing when it comes to this report?
No. So the investigative team that worked on this are all career men and women, both with our office and in the Civil Rights Division. We did this jointly. That investigative team are career men and women that have served through multiple administrations, done this work through multiple administrations, and will continue to do so. And no, the timing is not, the timing's the timing. Investigations take as long as they take. And there are investigations underway right now in our office that I would have loved to have seen finished in this administration, but that's not how it works. That's not how we do work at the department. We do work with integrity. We do high quality work, and the investigations take as long as they take. And so some things will not come to pass while I'm here, and the flip side of that is this investigation was done, and so we certainly aren't going to hold it for any reason when it's ready.
Now, I have a question. When it comes to, if the plans doesn't change, if there could be an impact that the jail could just shut down?
I have no knowledge of what could happen. That will be up to the county when we discuss with the county. We are happy to discuss options with the county for whatever it takes to meet constitutional standards. But
Is the report being made public?
yes, it will be public. There will be a link on the website that go out that you all receive.
All the investigations that are going on right now, they'll continue to go on, correct? They won't stop with the new administration, they'll continue to go on.
Correct.
And how many other facilities are under investigation right now?
In our district, there's only one other facility under investigation right now, which is Alcannon. We are enforcing one settlement agreement with DJJ. I believe department-wide, there's maybe 18 settlement agreements that the whole department nationwide are enforcing, and I'd have to look to see how many investigations are ongoing. I might have. I think we have 13 open investigations, being the Department of Justice nationwide. In this district, the only other one is an open investigation right now is Alcannon in the civil pattern and practice.
Now, knowing that it's unsafe, is there any plans to move inmates as of now?
We do not have the authority as Department of Justice to move inmates. We've already had a conversation with the county this morning. The career team that worked on this talked with county attorneys this morning, and we would like to move quickly to find ways to make it safe.
What were some of the immediate remedial actions that are happening?
Again, they're going to have to do stuff on supervision and staffing, where they're not unmanned housing units. We need to look at their classification system and have them take a hard look at that. We need to especially look at incident reporting and investigations, which has been, I think, a real problem. So they're laid out on the report for you. You'll be able to see the long list of like kind of basic remedial actions, but they're in those kind of categories.
And along those same lines, what about the contraband and drugs and the drug overdose problems that they've been having there? How are they going to address that?
That is also included in our report as, again, for trying to protect people who are detained there from harm. We note the amount of contraband coming in, different ways we've seen it come in, and the very large number of overdoses in recent months. I mean, there were just 4 last month, I believe. And so that is also listed out, and we make some recommendations on remedial measures in order to limit the limit contraband coming in, because we have drugs, weapons, other things that come in that really facilitate the violence in the jail, and so we need to take steps to stop that.
When it comes to some of these issues, the State Department of Corrections is tasked with inspecting jails, of course, and we've seen in past years, through those inspection reports, there have been several issues with a lot of jails, but specifically Alvin S. Glenn, when talking about staffing and other issues there. Did you all in your investigation find the State Department of Corrections at any fault? Should they have better enforced these minimum standards, or do you all have any recommendations from the state perspective?
So we did not look at the State Department of Corrections or we did not investigate them in any way. We did find their reports helpful in showing because again, we're looking at a pattern in practice and how long have these issues been standing, and we found their reporting and the work that they did helpful in our investigation.
When would you say the issues started, or at least remember these issues kind of started getting a lot worse than they had been?
The issues are long-standing. So in our report, we are really describing present-day conditions, and in looking to see about a pattern in practice in the jail, we have looked back several years and reports that are available, but we're really focused on present condition and recent history of a pattern in practice.
The county has consistently portrayed this as a jail industry-wide problem, and made statements that these are issues that occur in all other South Carolina jails around the country. You obviously said that Alvin S. Glenn stands apart. I'm wondering if you could provide a little bit of context for that statement and what separates it from other jails.
Yeah, so the level of violence is just remarkably different Sure, corrections across the country face staffing challenges. That is not unique. I think the level of staffing challenges and the lack of supervision, things that are not normal, is consistently finding out about incidents from outside sources rather than from people in the jail. You can look, we have in the report just a couple of comparators to help people kind of put this in context. For instance, compared to Miami-Dade, Alvin S. Glenn has 4 times the assaults and less than a quarter of the population. So when you look at that, it's just very different. We also, of course, looked at other courts that have enforced constitutional standards, and we include one example in there. Alvin S. Glenn has comparable rates of violence where courts have found it constitutionally inadequate and unacceptable and required change. And so Alvin S. Glenn is in that category where courts have said this does not meet constitutional muster.
So county officials have already seen the full report that you prepared, that your office prepared, and I was just wondering how they reacted to that and whether you would characterize them to have cooperated with you throughout this year-long investigation.
So there was a call this morning with the career team and county officials that I was not on because the team is the team with that, and they have been provided with a report. And so they just received it this morning, so I'm sure they're still working through it, and we are prepared to work with the county going forward on getting resolution.
Regarding their cooperation?
You know, we ultimately were allowed in the facility. We were able to interview staff and inmates and detainees, and we received a number of documents from the county ultimately, and we also received a great amount of information from other agencies and from third parties and have ample information for our findings report.
Were you able to determine from your investigation that the staff was properly vetted and well properly trained to handle the conditions at Elvinus?
So one of the things we do note in our report is because of the staffing challenges, Alvin S. Glenn has been using contractors through Allied, and one of the things we found is that those contractors, as opposed to full-time staff, do not undergo the same kind of scrutiny on being hired. They do not have the same training. Some of them have felonies that would prevent them from being full-time staff, and so that's something we also note is the use of contractors as opposed to full-time staff.
Scale of 1 to 10, how cooperative was the county?
I think I've said it all we can say. We got documents, we saw the facility, we interviewed people.
Thank you so much.